My name is Tyler. I was born in a quiet town where nothing ever changed and people just survived. My mother was tired all the time. She worked long shifts alone and cried when she got home. My father left when I was 5. He never said goodbye. He never wrote back, and we never saw him again. I grew up angry at the world, confused about life, afraid of the future, and tired of feeling small. At school, I sat in silence. I never raised my hand. I never did my work, and I skipped class a lot. The teachers stopped trying to help. They said I was lazy. They said I didn't care. They said I would fail. My friends were just like me. We roamed the streets at night, we looked for trouble, and we found it fast. We stole food from stores, we broke into cars, we ran from the cops, and we thought we were strong. But inside I was empty. I hated who I was. I hated being poor. I hated feeling worthless every day. When I turned 16, I got arrested for the first time. I spent 2 nights in jail, and I didn't sleep at all. My mom didn't come to see me. She was ashamed of me. She just sent a note and said nothing more. I got out and promised to change, but I didn't know how. I didn't have skills. I didn't have dreams or a plan. The streets welcomed me again. My old life called me back, and I followed without thinking twice. I joined a crew of older guys. They gave me money and respect, and I felt powerful for the first time. We sold stolen phones, we scammed people, we lived fast, and we thought it would never end. But nothing good lasts forever. And one night, it all went wrong, and I was the one left behind. The police came fast. They caught me in the alley. They shouted at me and pushed me to the ground. I was sentenced to a year in prison, not because I was dangerous, but because I was lost and careless. The prison was cold and loud. I didn't sleep for weeks. I didn't talk to anyone, and I felt like a ghost. I hated every second. I counted every day. I missed the air outside, and I missed being just a kid. Then I met a man named Joe. He was older and calm, and he saw something in me I didn't see. He gave me a book about strength and honor, about people who changed and built new lives. At first I laughed and threw it away, but something made me pick it up again and start reading. The words hit me deep inside. I started thinking. I started writing. I started hoping just a little. I began reading every day. I read poems and plays. I wrote thoughts in a notebook, and I felt alive. I talked to myself in the mirror. I made voices and faces. I acted out stories, and I felt free in my mind. The guards noticed and watched. One gave me a book of monologues and told me to keep going. I performed for fun in my cell, just for myself. And sometimes the guards stopped to listen in silence. I stayed quiet most days, but inside my head, something new was growing, like a light in the dark. Every time I read a new play, I imagined myself on stage, wearing costumes, speaking loud and proud. The words gave me power. They gave me hope. They made me feel human again, like I had a purpose. I forgot the cold floor. I forgot the bars. I forgot the fights. and I started living inside the story. The other prisoners laughed. They said I was crazy. They said I was wasting time. They didn't understand. But I didn't care anymore. I didn't want their respect. I wanted a new life. I wanted to become someone else. Joe kept pushing me. He said I had talent. He said my eyes spoke loud, even before my mouth did. He taught me how to breathe, how to pause, how to feel each word, and how to hold the silence strong. One day a group visited us. They were actors and artists. They came to perform for prisoners like us. I watched in silence as they acted, their voices rich, their faces full of pain, love, joy, and truth. After the play ended, I stood up and clapped. Something shook inside me. Something finally woke up. A woman from the group smiled at me. She came over slowly and asked if I ever acted before. I told her I practiced alone, I read lines every night, I talked to the mirror and performed in secret. She said I had a gift, a real voice, and that I should never stop even after I leave this place. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, and for the first time ever I saw a real future. Not as a thief, not as a prisoner, not as a lost kid, but as a man who stands under the stage light. Months passed by quickly. I read every script. I memorized speeches. I wrote down everything I learned. I sent letters to acting schools. I begged for chances. I asked for books, and people started to answer. Some sent me small books. Some sent me advice, some just sent kind words, but each one gave me hope. Even the prison guards helped me. They gave me space to rehearse and treated me with quiet respect. The day of my release came fast. I packed my few things, said goodbye to Joe, and stepped outside alone. The sun hurt my eyes at first. The world was loud again. Cars and people everywhere, life moving fast. I didn't have money. I didn't have clothes. I didn't have friends out there, but I had something stronger. I had belief in myself. I had my dream. I had all the pain behind me and a tiny fire pushing me forward. I slept in shelters at night. I looked for small jobs. I worked in kitchens. I washed dishes all day long. But every night I practiced my lines. I whispered to myself. I watched old films and copied the actors. I stood in front of mirrors in bathrooms. I watched how I moved, how I spoke, how I held every word. I knew nobody believed in me, but I didn't need them to. I only needed to keep going, step by step. I started going to auditions, wearing second-hand clothes, shaking from fear, but never missing one. I didn't get chosen at first. They laughed at my background. They said I was too raw, too different. But I always smiled. I always thanked them. I always left with grace and came back again and again. I learned something each time. How to stand taller. How to use my voice. How to control the nerves. One day, a casting director watched me. She didn't look away. She leaned forward and asked my story. I told her the truth, every part of it, about prison and plays, about Joe and the books, about the dream. She didn't laugh or judge. She just nodded slowly and told me to come back tomorrow for something big. I didn't sleep that night. I paced the room, repeating my lines, praying hard, and holding on to hope. I woke up early, washed my face, put on my best shirt, and left the small room quietly. The sun was still low, the streets were cold, but my heart was warm, full of silent hope. I arrived early at the studio. My hands were shaking, but I smiled at everyone and waited. There were many actors around, all more confident, but I stayed calm and focused on my dream. When my name was called, I walked in slowly, stood on the mark, and looked at the lights. The room was quiet. People were watching. I took a breath and began to say my lines. My voice felt strong, my heart was steady, my eyes looked up, and I gave it everything I had. The director didn't stop me. She let me finish, then nodded once and whispered something soft. She asked me to wait, then left the room, and I sat alone, feeling the weight of every second. I remembered the prison walls, Joe's calm voice, the pages I read, and the nights without sleep. When she returned, she smiled at me, handed me a card, and told me to come again next week. I walked out in silence, holding the card tight, feeling like the world had finally seen me. That week was long, full of nerves, but I stayed busy, working hard and reading every night. I didn't tell anyone, not even my roommate. I wanted to keep this moment between me and hope. When I returned, I met more people. They asked questions, listened close, and watched me act again. This time they gave me notes, helped me adjust, and told me I was being considered for a role. Days turned into weeks. The process was slow, but every call gave me more reason to believe. Then one afternoon I got the message, I got the part. I sat down and cried without shame. It was a small role, just a few scenes, but it meant everything. It was a door opening at last. I called Joe that night, told him the news. He laughed with pride, then stayed silent for a while. I filmed for 2 weeks. I followed every rule, arrived early, worked late, and learned from everyone. The camera scared me at first, but I learned fast. I listened well and gave my best each time. The other actors helped me. They saw I was serious. They shared tips and treated me with kindness. When the show aired, my name was small, but my face was there, and people began to notice. I started getting calls, small auditions, tiny roles, sometimes just one line or a short moment. But I said yes to everything. I wanted to grow. I wanted to prove myself, and I never complained. Each role taught me more, helped me improve, gave me new skills, and made me more confident. Sometimes I failed, sometimes I froze, but I never gave up, never missed a chance to try again. Months passed like days, and I kept climbing, step by step, slow but steady, never looking back. I moved to a better place, got a second job, saved some money, and started to believe in more. I met producers, directors, teachers, people who helped, who cared, and who opened new doors. One of them told me, "You have something real." And that small sentence changed everything inside me. One day I got a call. It was for a bigger part in a real movie with famous actors and a real budget. I read the script with shaking hands. It was deep, full of emotion, full of pain I understood too well. I prepared day and night, repeated lines, studied scenes, and worked on every tiny detail. The audition went well, and days later I got the part, and I knew my life was about to change. The movie took months. It was hard work, long days, little sleep, and pressure I never knew before. But I felt alive. I felt ready. I felt like everything I had suffered was preparing me for this moment. When the film was released, my name was there, my face was everywhere, and people noticed fast. Reviews said I was raw, honest, powerful, and that I brought something new and real to the screen. I was invited to interviews, red carpets, big events, and people started asking about my past. At first I hid it, afraid they'd judge. But then I realized the truth was my strength, not my shame. I told my story on camera, talked about prison, Joe, the books, the nights alone, the hunger to grow. People listened, they cried, they reached out, and told me my story gave them new hope again. I started to get letters, messages from people, fans of the movie, and young men from hard places. They said I gave them hope, made them believe, helped them feel strong and less alone inside. Some were still in prison. Some just got out. Some had no family. And some just wanted to try. I answered every message. I sent words of love, shared parts of my story, and gave them respect. I didn't forget Joe. I visited him often. We sat for hours, drinking tea and laughing quietly. He always smiled big, said he was proud, said I was proof that change was real and possible. One day I brought him to a movie set. He watched in silence and then cried behind the scenes. He said, "This is what you were born for." And I felt something deep move in my chest. After that, I started giving talks, visiting schools, telling kids to believe, to read, to fight for more. I told them I was no genius, no lucky star, just a man who decided not to give up on himself. Sometimes I saw their eyes change, like a light turned on, like a door opened in their heart. I knew then that this was more than acting. This was my chance to change more than my life. I kept getting roles, big and small, but now I chose carefully, only stories that had real meaning. I said no to empty scripts, said yes to truth, pain, growth, and people who needed a voice. Each role taught me more, made me braver, and helped me speak without fear or shame. I played fathers, fighters, workers, ex-cons, dreamers, men like me, and men I once feared. Sometimes I still woke up afraid, hearing prison sounds, feeling lost in my old broken past. But then I'd look around at the morning light, my small apartment, my growing list of chances. I'd breathe in deep, remind myself gently that I was free now, that I earned every step I stood on. And I promised that I would never waste it, never forget it, never let it all slip away again. I met new friends, real ones this time, people who listened, who laughed, who shared their pain. They didn't care about the past. They saw the now. They saw the fight. They saw the change. We worked on projects, helped local kids, visited shelters, and built something stronger together. It felt good to give back, to be a light, to be more than a story, more than a face on a screen. One night I got a call from a big director. She said she wrote a part just for someone like me. She had seen my film, heard my talks, read my story, and said my spirit was in the character. I read the script. It made me cry. It was real, deep, raw, like pages from my own old journal. The movie was about pain, survival, second chances, and the power of never giving up. We filmed for months, traveled across cities, worked long hours, and gave our hearts to the scenes. It was my biggest role, and I gave it my all. Every line came from real places inside me. When it was done, I watched it in silence, holding my breath, feeling like I was seeing my life again. The movie went to festivals. People stood and clapped, and I felt seen in a new way for the first time. Then came interviews, big stages, lights and cameras. But I stayed quiet, honest and grounded. They asked about awards, about fame, about money, but I always returned to my first night in jail. I talked about my cell, the silence there, the fear, the regret, and the man who brought me a book. I said that moment saved me, started me, gave me a ladder when I was too deep to see the sky. People listened. They leaned in close, some with tears, some with smiles, all with open hearts. They said I reminded them of their brother, their son, their student, someone they once gave up on. I told them never stop believing, never stop trying, because even a lost man can become a light. Not because he is perfect, but because he refused to stay broken and dared to rise again. Soon I was offered a book deal, a chance to write everything, to share the full truth in my own words. I stayed up late every night, writing memories, tears falling as I typed, pages filled with pain and love. I wrote about my mother, about the streets, about prison nights, about hunger and shame and growth. I wrote with my heart wide open, not to impress, but to help someone else feel less alone. When the book was published, it reached thousands, then millions, and messages came again. They came from teachers, prisoners, parents, kids, people from every place and every walk of life. Some said they were about to give up, but my words stopped them, helped them try one more time. I cried reading those letters, knowing that my story, once so heavy, was now a gift to others. Then came the biggest surprise, a letter from the president, saying my voice mattered, my path inspired. He invited me to speak, at a youth event, in front of leaders, teachers, and young dreamers. I stood on stage, looked out at faces, and felt calm, strong, ready, and full of quiet fire. I told them I was once broken, once forgotten, but I chose to rise, and they could too. The day after my speech, I sat alone, thinking of where I had started and where I now stood. I remembered cold nights, broken walls, loud fights, and silence that lived deep in my chest. I thought of the cell, the books I read, the words I wrote, and the dreams I slowly rebuilt. And I smiled softly, not from pride, but from peace, a peace I had not known before now. I kept acting in films, playing roles that mattered, roles that showed heart, pain, and hope. Each role brought something new, a mirror of the past, a voice for someone who felt unseen. People watched, cried, clapped, and shared stories of how it touched something inside them. That was the goal now, not the fame, not the money, but the chance to reach and lift others. I started a group with friends I trusted to help people in prison find books and mentors. We sent books every week, wrote letters, offered calls, and gave real chances to change. Some of those men are free now, working jobs, raising kids, building small lives with pride. They say my story helped them start, but really, they did the hard work and made it real. I met my father once again after all these years, after all the silence and the empty space. He looked tired and small, eyes full of shame, and said, "I don't deserve your time." I didn't hug him. I didn't cry. I just said, "I forgive you," and walked away feeling light. Not because he earned it, but because I didn't want to carry his pain in my story anymore. I kept writing more, not just books, but films too. Stories about boys like me and men like Joe. I wanted the world to see them, not just their crimes, but their hearts, their tears, their light. My scripts were picked by kind directors who gave care, time, and truth to every scene. And when people watched them, they saw not just actors, but parts of their own forgotten selves. I bought a small house near the beach, quiet and simple, with books and coffee and sunlight. Sometimes I sat by the window holding tea, watching birds fly and thinking about freedom. Not just walking free, but breathing free, living free, without fear, guilt, or deep hunger. It took years to feel it, but now it lived in me, gently, like a song I finally remembered. I visited Joe's grave on his birthday, placed flowers down, and sat in silence for a long while. I whispered thanks, said his name, told him I made it, and that his gift saved my soul. Sometimes a wind passed, soft and warm, and I liked to think it was him, still proud of me. He was gone, but his love stayed, his light stayed, and I carried it into every room I entered. Now I teach at a school part-time just once a week, but those hours mean more than gold. I teach writing, I teach truth, I tell my story, and help them write their own with courage. Some kids laugh, some cry, some sit quietly, but every one of them carries a dream inside. And I remind them every week that no one is too broken to begin again and shine bright. When I go home, I look at my wall filled with photos, letters, posters, and quiet memories. There's no photo of prison, no photo of pain, but I still feel those things when I close my eyes. And I am grateful, deeply so, because even the worst nights shaped me into the man I became. Without them, there would be no light, no fire, no story to tell, and no life to be proud of. I am not famous to everyone, not a star in every room, not rich beyond dreams or fear. But I am known where it matters, in hearts, in prisons, in homes where hope was once gone. That is more than enough, more than I ever dreamed, more than the boy in jail ever believed. And every day I rise, walk forward, speak soft, and thank life for letting me begin again,